Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how I make my sourdough pizza crust. Hey Sugar Spun bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. Today we are making a simple sourdough pizza crust. Very easy recipe, does take a little bit of patience because it takes some time, but it's totally worth it. Let's go ahead and get started. You're going to need a large mixing bowl, and to this we are going to add a half cup or 115 grams of active starter. I fed my starter early this morning. It's nice and bubbly, it's doubled in size, so it's ready to go. Next, we'll add a tablespoon of olive oil, which I think is really important for giving the crust the perfect texture. We'll also add 2 teaspoons of honey. I like adding a little bit of sugar in there to help feed that yeast. And we're also going to add 1 cup of warm water. I like this to be between 90 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Now mix this all together. I want to get that honey sort of broken up, get my sourdough starter mixed with the water. The olive oil will separate a bit on top, that's expected. And next we'll add our flour. I really recommend using bread flour for today's recipe. It's just going to give you a crust that has a typical pizza crust texture to it. All-purpose flour could be used in a pinch, but it's going to make it more fluffy than a pizza crust really should be. This is 2 3/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons of bread flour, which is 368 grams. I'm going to go ahead and add this right into the bowl. And I'm also going to add a scant teaspoon of table salt or fine sea salt. At this point, I like to use my hands to stir everything together until the dough is clinging together, but it should still be shaggy. I'm scraping the sides. I want to get all of that flour absorbed by the water. Now, if your dough, for any reason, is super dry, you can go ahead and add additional water, like a tablespoon or a splash at a time, until you have the proper consistency, which I will show you what that looks like in a moment. So the dough will be a bit dry, but all of the flour has been absorbed. It is shaggy. That's how we want it at this point because we are going to let it sit for 30 to 60 minutes before we go any further with it. Clean my hands and I'll cover it with a piece of plastic wrap. So my dough's been sitting for almost an hour now, so it's done with the autolyse period. So what we're going to do now is stretch and fold the dough. I prefer this to kneading when it comes to sourdough. It just seems to work better with helping develop the gluten. If you've made my sourdough bread before, you're already familiar with this process, and I'll show you how we do it. Now, I like to wet my hands with a little bit of cool water because it's going to keep the dough from sticking too much, and it is kind of a sticky dough. Now, since we just finished the autolyse period, I'm going to use my hands to form this into a ball. And then I'm going to do my first set of stretch and folds. I always do 4 of these. I just grip the dough by the 12 o'clock point. It's 12 o'clock for me, might be 6 o'clock for you, depending on how the camera looks. And I'm going to stretch it up, and then I'm going to fold it over itself. Stretch and fold. Then I'll repeat this. I'll turn the dough and I'll repeat it because I'm going to do it in 4 parts. Do it again. The dough's a little bit stiff, that's fine. Just do your best. And I do kind of tug it a little bit to help stretch it without yanking it and breaking it. And then I will recover this and I'm going to place it in a warm place. I have a proofing oven, so I'm going to put it in there, but just put it in a warm spot in your house, a draft-free place. You could also put it in the oven with just the oven light on without the oven actually heating. Then I'm going to repeat this stretch and fold process, typically about 3 to 5 times. I'll do it every 30 minutes and I'll do it until the dough has increased in size about 50%. It's been 30 minutes, so I'll stretch and fold it again 4 times. After another 30 minutes, I'll do it again. All right, so at this point, I'm pretty happy with how my dough is looking. I'd say it's increased in size enough, so I'm going to turn it out onto a lightly floured surface. And the dough can be pretty sticky at this point, that's fine. I'll just use my dough scraper or bench scraper. All I'm doing at this point is just forming it into a ball. And today's recipe makes 2 pizza doughs, so I'm going to divide this in half. I want to try to do this pretty evenly. I always just eyeball it. You could weigh it if you want to be super technical. And we're not going to be able to use the dough right away. We have to store it first. So the way I like to store mine is in glass bowls or glass containers. Some people like to take the dough and just pop it in a Ziploc bag. It can kind of be a pain to get out sometimes. It can be a little sticky. So using a glass dish works really nicely. And then to help it come out easily, I like to add a little bit of olive oil. So I'll grease both these bowls with a little bit of oil. I'll use my bench scraper to scrape that up. Drop it right in the bowl. Doesn't have to look beautiful, I just like it to be resembling a ball. Now I'll just cover these with plastic wrap, keep them from drying out. And both of these bowls will need to rest at least overnight in the refrigerator before we can use the dough. You can let them sit longer than that if you'd like, a full day, 48 hours, that would also be fine. But they do need to rest overnight, so I'm going to pop these in the fridge and I'll see you tomorrow. All right, nice to see everybody still here. So as I think I said yesterday, you want to leave your dough in the refrigerator at least 24 hours. I would say you might be able to get away with 12 hours and up to 4 or 5 days. Now, the day that you are ready to bake your pizza, you're going to want to pull it out of the fridge and you're going to let it sit covered for at least half an hour and up to several hours. I usually let mine sit for 2 or 3 hours before I begin working with it and baking. At least half an hour before you're ready to bake, you'll want to start preheating your oven to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. It does take a while for most ovens to get to that temperature, so I do start mine that early. Now my dough has been sitting for a while. You can see it's risen quite a bit. Let me get it unwrapped. So we're ready to bake it. Now to shape our dough, I'm going to grab myself a pizza pan and I'm going to lightly brush this with some oil because I don't want the pizza dough to stick to the pan. This is just olive oil that I'm using. You end up using quite a bit of olive oil when shaping this dough and baking it. I also like to lightly oil my hands. It just helps keep the dough from sticking too much. It makes it easier to work with. Seems silly, you don't have to do it, but it's what works best for me. I'll turn this out onto my pan. I like to try to center it. And now I'm just going to use my hands to form it into about a 10 to 12 inch circle. Just gently pressing it out. You'll be deflating any bubbles as you go. And once you have it to a pretty nice size, you can either pinch the ends to make the crust, or you can fold them over. I am terrible at making a nice circular pizza dough, so I will be very happy if this comes out looking even somewhat round and not like an amoeba. I'm just going to fold my ends over, or kind of roll them over and tuck it underneath itself. All right, once your pizza dough is looking good and you're happy with the size of it, which I am pretty happy with the shape of mine, I didn't expect it to come out quite so round, we're going to brush it all over with olive oil. You don't need to use a ton, just a light coating. It's going to help encourage the crust to brown nicely, and it'll help it get nice and crisp. And I also like to take a fork and pierce it all over. You're probably going to end up with some bubbles while you're baking the crust, but this helps eliminate that. And we are not going to add any toppings yet. We're going to par bake the crust because that's going to help keep it nice and crisp. I'm going to take it over to my 500 degree Fahrenheit oven and I'm going to bake it for 8 to 9 minutes. So after about 9 minutes in the oven, your pizza should be beginning to turn a light golden brown, at least in some spots. Do not turn your oven off because we're going to need it again. Of course, we're going to add our toppings and then pop this back in the oven. Now before I add my toppings, I like to give this pizza crust another light brushing with olive oil, especially on the crust, because it's going to help encourage a nice deep browning on the crust and give us that nice crisp bite to it. And then just a light brushing in the center. Toppings are pretty standard. I'm just using a little bit of pizza sauce. I will link to my homemade pizza sauce if you'd like to try that out. You can see I got a little bubble there. I'm just gonna stab it. I don't actually know if that makes much of a difference when it goes back in the oven, but I will tell you that before you eat your pizza, everything should settle down nicely. We'll add some mozzarella cheese, just a simple cheese pizza. And then this is going to go back in the oven where I find mine usually needs to bake for about another 8 minutes. You want the crust to be nice and golden, and you want the cheese to be nice and melty and maybe even a little bit bubbly before you remove it. All right, this looks pretty good. While it's still warm out of the oven, I'm going to add a little bit of torn basil just because I like that on top. Then I'll let it cool just another minute longer before I cut it into pieces and have it for lunch. Pan's still a little bit hot. Can you hear the crispness of this crust? I love it. It's still really hot, so I'm burning my fingers, but you guys know how I am about food. I don't have a lot of patience. All right. Take a look at that. It's really hot, so I'm gonna put it on a plate actually, but I am really excited for you guys to try this recipe at home. And then when you do, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think, because I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is take 2 because It was really hot for the first bite. That is a good pizza crust.